don't think we're doing a very good job of preparing our students for either real-world listening or that academic listening.
Is that what really prompted you to write your latest book, integrating authentic listening into the language classroom? What
Yeah.
and more specifically, Sheila, what problem were you trying? What problem are you trying to solve in ELT?
I think it's that there's so many misconceptions in ELT. Part of the problem is that teachers, when they're doing their training, don't get very much input on listening. They've got to cover all four skills, classroom management, all kinds of things. So very minimal input. So on a I don't know, Cambridge Search course, it's maybe just a couple of hours, a bit longer on a diploma course, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't go into it in great detail. They then become qualified teachers, they go into the classroom. Yes, they're using the course books. Maybe they try to use some authentic listening. And as I said, if they haven't done that before and the students haven't been exposed to it before, it can be a bit of a disaster. And they will never do it again. I cannot tell you how many conferences I go to where people come up and say, "Well, I did try it, but it didn't work, so I never use it." Um, I think one of my worst experiences was giving a 3 hour talk at a college, a further education college, on a Friday afternoon, where they were doing ESOL. So it was refugees and asylum seekers. They'd got me there on Friday afternoon. Nobody wanted to be in this talk, but they had to be. And they were talking at the start, I was talking about the listening they did, and they said, "Well, we don't do any listening because our students get all the listening they need out in the community." So there I was talking for 3 hours to an audience that really didn't want to be there, and made it very clear that they didn't want to be there indeed. What was I saying? Yes,
We were the book.
why I wrote the book. Yeah. So I have noticed over the last 20 or 30 years, since I've been banging my head against a brick wall trying to persuade publishers to include authentic listening, I have noticed they are including more authentic listening videos. Fantastic. So, like, typical example would be a unit on food and drink, and then some interviews with real life people, Vox Pox interviews. Pox? Vox Pop.
Mm. Vox Pop, yeah.
Vox Pox would be something very, very different. So they include Vox Pop interviews with people in the street. Fantastic. Real life language. But then all that happens is, what does this person like eating for breakfast? What does this person like
Right.
when they go out for dinner? Um, they're not mining the actual content of the recording. They're only dealing with it for comprehension. And there still pursues this idea that you give students listening comprehension, tasks, they listen to something twice. And Richard Caldwell talks about the process of his osmosis, as if that's going to make their listening better. When, as you said, Leo, you're just testing them with listening
Yeah.
comprehension.
Yeah. Wow.
So I got very, very frustrated indeed. And there's been time in my lives. Sorry, Andrew, this is going very unfluent. There have been times in my life
Authentic
where
listening.
I know it's crap,
That's
isn't it?
it.
There's been times in my life where I don't know. Yes, I used to get this a lot at conferences. I'd get members coming up of the audience coming up afterwards and saying, "Yes, but you can only use authentic listening with advanced students." I'd say,
Mm.
"No, no, no, it is possible with lower level learners." "No, you can't." "Yes, you can." And that was one of the motivations for me to write my Real Lives, Real Listening
Hmm.
series.
Great series,
And
by the way.
normally, thank you very much. But normally, when you write a series, you start with intermediate level. And I was so determined to prove that you could use authentic recordings with elementary students. So I put all my money into doing the elementary one first. But there is a funny story with these books because I
Mm.
decided to publish them myself because no other publisher would touch them. They didn't like the idea of authentic listening. And yes, I went to a printing company and said what I wanted, a book just stapled in the middle, pages folded over. How much would that cost? And the chap said, "Oh, about £1 to produce." Well, I knew I could sell those books for way more than £1. So I went away and spent 2 years writing the series, went back to the printer, and he said, £15. I said, "What?" And I said, "You said about £1 2 years ago." And he said, "Yes, that's if you ordered 15,000, which I wasn't going
Wow.
to do." Yes. So that was a learning curve, but yeah, it worked out in the end.
It's to those of you who don't know, it's a great series. It's called Real Lives, Real Listening. And correct me if I'm mistaken. I think there is an elementary, an intermediate,
Elementary,
and
intermediate,
an
and
advanced.
advanced. Yes.
I actually
Yeah.
got a copy of the elementary one,
Hmm.
and as I said to you, it was inspiration for me to actually design this entire course that I've been teaching for the last 7 weeks.
Hmm.
And before we wrap up here, Sheila, we have I kind of wanted to, in a way, honor the kind of legacy that you're leaving behind for a lot of us. I think your work, the work of Caldwell, who unfortunately has decided to retire, so we couldn't get him on the podcast. It would be great to have you and him,
Mm.
and Field as well. I think you have. I wanted to say this to you because I might not have a chance to see you at ITAFO because I'm not going to be there. But I just wanted to say, and I think a lot of people will agree with me that your work has definitely influenced a lot of us. I think you have made tremendous contributions to the field of English language teaching, and I'm very happy that we get to interview you in this podcast and maybe have your message out there to thousands of people who listen to our show. And I was on LinkedIn, and I didn't tag you on purpose because I wanted to surprise you. But I got a few very nice and lovely messages from a lot of people who have said
Brilliant.
wonderful things about your work, and I'm going to name some of them here just because I think it's nice for you to actually know that everything that you have worked for in your career hasn't been in vain. And unfortunately, language teaching, specifically education in general, moves at tortoise space, I guess, turtle space. It's just really slow. But Gemma Archer, who was in the podcast very recently, said that she loves your work. Everyone in the pronunciation special interest group at ITEFL they're all big fans of your work. We have Anthony Green, who has also been doing a lot of amazing work in Italy with decoding, and he's built his own. I think he calls it voice cloud or voice book cloud. We're probably going to get him on the podcast. We have Thomas, who basically said that your book, the Authentic Listening book, was highly inspirational. Aaron, Cassian, and tons of people who have wonderful things to say about your work. And of course, kudos to Richard Chin for convincing you and all those 41 emails that we exchanged to finally get you on the podcast, because I think your work truly deserves to be acknowledged. It truly deserves to be recognized because you have definitely made an impact in language teaching. It definitely impacted the way I teach listening. And I think and if it's impacting one teacher, then you're impacting all the students that I work with. If it
Yes.
impacts Mike's work, it impacts all the students that he's working with, and the same goes for Andrew. So we just wanted you to know that, and I think everyone listening to know that your work really wasn't in vain. Even though at times you said you were banging your head against a brick wall, and
Yes.
we need people like you, and we're glad that we have people like you who have really chosen to disrupt the status quo in language teaching. And I think the only reason why we can perhaps one of the main reasons why we can make progress is because of trailblazers like you. So
Okay.
so thank you for that.
Well, that actually brought a tear to my eye. So thank you ever so much indeed. It's been a long journey, a hard slog, but to know I've had an effect is absolutely amazing, and I'm very pleased indeed. Thank you.
What's ahead for you now, Sheila? What are you looking forward to
I
next? What's your
I don't
next
know.
adventure?
I'm on the cusp of retiring, but then we have a session like this, and I get all enthusiastic again. And I would absolutely love to write another authentic listening book. The problem with authentic listening is it's really hard work. We talked before about writing transcripts, making the recordings. It's tough. Having written the authentic listening methodology book, I would love to follow that up with a series of interviews, monologues with interesting people, using the same approach that I've used in my methodology book and turning those recordings into ready made teaching materials. I'm
Hmm.
so aware that teachers do not have the time to produce their own materials, they've got far too much to do. But I would just love that, to have a book. with my name on it and ready-made materials for teachers. So at least they were using the right approach.